Hello and welcome to a special edition of Main Street. I'm your host, Bree Gannon. Today we are fortunate enough to sit down and talk with two people who are looking to make a difference in the Ashland community. Mayoral candidates Matt Miller and Sandra Tunnell sit down with myself and Megan Furby to talk about their campaigns and their plans to run for office. Here with me now is former County Commissioner and current City Councilman Matt Miller. Matt, thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So talk to me about your thinking process when making the decision that you were going to run for mayor.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you take a look at all that's happening in the city of Ashland and in the surrounding community, you'll notice that over the last 5 years or so, we have seen positive changes in every entity that's vital for the success of this community. Our schools finally passed a levy and have built new buildings, beautiful new buildings, moving our education forward in the city of Ashland. We have a great director of the Chamber of Commerce, and she's brought new life to the organization. Our United Way, that works with all of our nonprofits and charities, has had great leadership, been one of the few United Ways in the state of Ohio to make their goal year after year, actually for 10 years in a row. When you take a look at all of the positive things that are happening in this community, you can be very excited about our future. But when you take a look at each entity, in my mind, the one that's left where we need to make positive changes is in our city government. In many ways, the city government is the heart of our community. And if the heart's not healthy or the heart's not beating strong, then everything is held back and stifled. I believe that if I get the chance to serve as mayor, we can breathe new life into the city government and in turn ensure that we have a bright future.
Your campaign taglines are making Ashland a community of excellence and kind of putting Ashland on the map. What were the thinking process and how you came to those taglines for your campaign?
You know, Ashland's a relatively small community, a small rural community. We're in a great location right here on Interstate 71, halfway between Cleveland and Columbus. But for so long, you would hear folks in this city talk like this. They would say, well, it's good enough for Ashland. Or, well, this is only Ashland, what do you expect? I want to erase that thinking. There is no reason why we can't be a community of excellence. There's no reason why we can't thrive like our neighbors, for example, to the east, Worcester, or like Mount Vernon to our south, and so on. We've got all of the components in place. We've got talented businessmen and women who are willing to put their talents to work for the future of this city. We've got nonprofit leaders who are excited about the work they're doing, the compassionate outreach they're making to citizens in need. And if we can cooperate with one another and bring everyone together and support these organizations through our city government, we'll have a bright future, and there's no reason why we can't be a community of excellence.
Okay, going from your position as the former county commissioner to now a city councilman, what has that transition been like for you?
You know, it has been a transition. The truth is I have been involved both at the county level with the county government. I've been involved with the state level currently through my role at the Ohio Department of Transportation, and of course recently have joined the city council. And part of the reason why I ran for the city council, and especially because I ran for the seat, the at-large seat that represents the whole city, was because I knew that the mayor had said, Mayor Glenn Stewart had said that he wasn't planning to seek re-election. And I'll admit that I do have an interest in leading this city, and it's not a new interest. It's been developing over the last several years. And I know, based on all the experience that I do have in government, that the only way you can truly figure out how an organization operates, especially how a government organization operates, is from learning it from the inside. That is the reason I ran for city council, not just to serve the people and improve the community, but to learn who are the people that pull the strings behind the scenes. How do people interact with one another? Those are vital things to know if you're going to step up and, in essence, be the CEO of an organization such as our city. So you ask about the transition. There has been a transition. In county government, all of the county office holders and the people that lead the county are elected by the same group of people. In essence, no one reports to anyone else. The county commissioners, of course, approve everyone's budget, but each individual office holder is really their own boss, or the people are their boss. Therefore, you have to work together if you're going to get something done, because no one has power over another. In city government, it's a little different. Not everyone is elected. Our department heads, the people that run the street department, the people that run the engineer's office, the people that run the park and recreation organization, an aspect of our city government, they actually are hired and appointed by the mayor. Therefore, there are bosses. There are people that have to report to and follow the directions of others in city government. And that dynamic does create an interesting tension, if you will, at times in city government. And I would say of all the things that I have observed being a part of both the county and the city, that is the biggest difference.
How has being so heavily involved and well known in the community benefited your campaign?
Well, I'll tell you what, I have spent the entire life, all 40 years, right here in the city of Ashland. In fact, I guess that's not entirely true. I did grow up in Jeromesville area, but I was born in Samaritan Hospital. And I'll tell you what, I love this community. And at this point, after being involved for so many years, the truth is, because we're a small community, you can virtually know just about everyone. And I consider the people that I am asking to support me in this campaign and to choose me to be their mayor, I consider them my friends and family. And you know as well as I do, it's always exciting and it's always more easy to be passionate when you're serving the ones that you know and love.
And then on the flip side of that, your wife Melanie is also
Yes.
very known. How has having both of you, very well known and everybody knows you in the community, how does that
Yes.
put like a negative strain? Like, is there some sort of pressure to be successful and end out on top?
Well, it's a good question, but I have to tell you, first of all, being married to Melanie and having Melanie in our lives here in Ashland is by no means a negative. Melanie is probably one of the brightest sparkles we have in this community. She is a woman who is not only talented and intelligent, but she has a heart of gold. And in fact, if there's any challenge that comes from being with Melanie and serving this community is she outshines me all the time. So I would say that Melanie and I have seen really no negative being involved and being known in the community. Like I said, we wouldn't want it any other way.
Okay, and then what kind of duties did you have as the county commissioner, and then what kind of do you do now with being the city councilman?
It's a good question, and part of the reason it's a good question because even though they're executive positions in different levels of government, their roles are different. As a county commission, the County Board of Commissioners' primary responsibilities is budgeting and appropriating, determining how to spend county tax dollars here in our county. In addition, although many people think they can set laws and ordinance for the county, they cannot. They are simply an arm of state government charged with carrying out all the laws that are passed by the Ohio General Assembly in the county of Ashland. The city government, however, in serving on city council, the city council in essence is the legislative body in city government. And therefore, in essence, they can make laws. Now, we don't refer to them as laws, we refer to them as ordinances, but not only is the city council involved with budgeting and approving a budget to spend city income tax dollars here in our community, but they also do at times pass ordinances that in essence establish the laws here in the city of Ashland.
How will the skills that you have learned from both of those positions be beneficial for a mayor position?
I'll tell you what, in this day and age, the only way a community our size is going to survive is if we are willing to cooperate and work with other levels of government. Because we're a small community, you can't keep taxing our folks over and over and over again. They're going to run out of money. And just because we have a small pool of people to draw from, we can't keep raising their tax rates on their property taxes and their income taxes and their sales taxes just to try to make government survive. We're going to have to rely on working with other jurisdictions, and in particular with the state government, when it comes to getting grants, bringing state dollars back to our community to get some of the projects accomplished that we desire to see come to fruition in our backyard. Good example is, right now there's a nonprofit board that's been established to refurbish the Ashland Shines Theater. Many would know it as formerly the movie theater. And this is a major project, and it's an expensive project. And believe me, if anyone's watching and they have a heart for that theater, the group would love to have their help, physical labor, as well as monetary donations to support that project. But to kick off their project, I was very fortunate to be able to work with Larry Obhoff and Dave Hall in the Ohio General Assembly to secure a grant of a little more than $300,000 to help with that remodeling of that theater. There's a good example of $300,000 that would have went elsewhere in the state, and our residents would have received no benefit whatsoever. Working with them, we were able to bring it back to the city of Ashland, and now hopefully in a few years, we will have a wonderful entertainment venue in downtown Ashland.
Okay, and then looking at your vision for Ashland, you kind of have four main components of, like your campaign and like what you want to do to revamp the city. Tell me about the process of, coming up with those four.
Well, like I said, after Melanie and I have been involved in this community for so long, you make observations. You see where things could work better or where people are struggling and facing challenges. And as a result, if you are creative and you talk to others and you get others' ideas and listen to their opinions and so on, it's not so difficult to establish what our priorities should be as we move this community forward. I would say that the first and foremost, one of the things that I've already mentioned is so important to our success, and that is city-county cooperation. When I talk about that, what I'm referring to is the county government and the city government are very limited in the amount of money they have to accomplish the projects that folks that live here want to see accomplished. The only way we will be successful is if these two entities put their heads together, put aside any personal agendas, and work together to move this community forward. This past year, we had some tense moments between the two bodies as we were taking a look at our 911 system and whether or not we should continue to house it here in Ashland or whether we should move it to Worcester. And we need to make sure that in the future, we all do get on the same page so that we can keep our resources right here in our own city, in our own county, rather than shipping them elsewhere. Go ahead.
No.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
No,
I get excited when we start talking about the things we want to focus on.
Yeah. Then kind of just bouncing off of that, you talked about city departments, and like, potentially moving their resources. What is kind of like the plan to keep those resources here and even make them better?
Well, I'll tell you what. One of the first steps that we've taken to, I guess you could say, use our own resources to take care of our own people and our own priorities here in this city is the recent passage of the income tax measures to fund our city streets. I don't need to tell anyone that our streets are in dire need of repair. In fact, many days I go home and I'm just overwhelmed because the truth is just about every street in the city of Ashland, whether it's a high traffic street or whether it's a side alley, is crumbling and is in need of repair. Thanks to our voters, we're going to soon have more money to fund or begin funding these repairs. The City Council has been working with the city engineer to take a look at each and every street in this community and in this city. We've driven the streets and we've tried to figure out which streets are in the worst shape and which streets have the most traffic, are most in need of repair, can justify the repair most quickly. And after doing so, we've assembled a list of 40 or more streets. We're still tweaking it because citizens are expressing their ideas of where we might want to change our focus and focus on a street that we didn't have in that list of 40. But that's a good example of where we're using our resources to take care of our needs. Other places, of course, I know we need to continue to work together as a city government and as a county government to address the drug abuse issues that are taking place here in our community. Certainly this isn't a challenge that is unique to Ashland. It's all across the state and country at this point. But there's a place where city law enforcement, the police department, county law enforcement, the sheriff's department, and the court system, we all need to be working together, and we are, along with the Mental Health and Recovery Board and other nonprofit agencies in this community, to address a priority or a problem here in this community.
Okay, and then kind of moving on to job creation.
Yes.
With Ashland being such a small city and a small community, how do you plan to create those jobs for residents or even like up and coming, students who are at the high school and the university?
Yes, excellent. I'll tell you what, certainly during this campaign, you're going to hear us talk a lot about revitalizing downtown. And that's so important, but it's only one component of our economic development strategy. The truth is, one of the ways that we're going to help businesses be successful downtown, eateries, restaurants, boutiques, unique shopping experiences, breweries, is by being able to provide a group of people that have jobs elsewhere, that have discretionary income, that will come to our downtown and spend their money. And your question, being a small community, how are we going to attract jobs here? here's the fact of the matter. Some of our greatest and most effective economic development efforts are going to happen not in the Economic Development Office. They're going to happen by this: reaching out to the men and women who currently own and operate businesses right here in the city of Ashland and asking them if they will go to work to help us reach their suppliers. Perhaps Mr. Smith owns a nut and bolts shop, and Mr. Smith knows that one of his suppliers out in Milwaukee is looking to move the plant this direction, more towards the northeast, and he's looking for a location. More than any other site recruiter or developer that we might find that might convince this supplier to come here, the person that's already doing business, Mr. Smith, he can reach out to that supplier and say, you know what, I'm running a business in Ashland, Ohio. It's very effective. I'm prosperous. We're doing a great business. Why don't you consider taking a look at this place? I'll tell you, many of the projects that you have seen happen here in Ashland have come through those informal contacts, just like I described. So this all goes back to the way you will make the city of Ashland successful in the future is by throwing open the doors of city government and inviting others in to offer their ideas and assistance on how to move the community forward. Too often, as government leaders, we start, quote, fearing the public. We're scared to listen to them. After all, you know, an election might come up, and if I don't have all the right ideas, and they say that, and they offer an idea that's more popular than mine, people are going to think I'm not worth very much. And so as a result, people start putting up barriers. I don't want to hear what everyone has to say because they might outshine me. Well, let me tell you, I live with a woman who outshines me. I'm fine with anyone else who wants to outshine me, and I know they can. And one of the priorities would be to invite these business leaders in, nonprofit leaders in, education leaders in, workforce development leaders in, and say, listen, here's what we're facing as a city. What resources can you help us meet these needs with? And not only that, what contacts do you have that we can work with you to help bring businesses to this community? So that's kind of a long answer to your question, but that's a very, very important question.
And then kind of going off of that, you know, you talk about the revitalization of, you know, like downtown, and there are a lot of people who are for saving old Ashland, you know, not messing with those historic buildings, you know, that have been there for years. How do you kind of deal with, you know, those residents and those people that, you know, kind of don't want that to happen?
You know, the good news is, and I have been involved for quite some time, as you know, more than a decade, I've been involved in our local government. And I'll tell you that probably 10 years ago, I think that sentiment among some of our older residents that have been around here was probably more significant than it is today. I think those folks that at one time may have really been disturbed by wanting to refurbish or remodel the front of an old building or an old home now are seeing that, you know what, you have to change if you're going to keep up with the times. If we try to keep everything just the way it is, and believe me, we want to preserve our heritage because we have people of character here, we have beautiful structures, certainly on the center street, the historic street here in the city of Ashland, and even downtown, the theater's a prime example. And whenever possible, we want to preserve them. But we will have to make some changes to move the community forward. Let me tell you, when it comes to revitalizing downtown, one of the things that excites me the most is the fact that we've had a lot of folks that are in their probably mid-30s now, early 30s, maybe late 20s. They left Ashland. They couldn't wait to graduate. They wanted to go see the world. They left. They went off to great places to go to college. There they saw wonderful entertainment venues. They saw quaint boutiques. There were wonderful bookstores, all the things that you and I envision in a wonderful, thriving downtown. They experienced them and they fell in love with them. But after getting married, having a child or two, they realized they wanted to go back home and be closer to mom and grandma and grandpa and so on. And many of those folks are coming back. But with them now, they are bringing a vision of what they saw elsewhere. And now they want to implement it right here in our community. And in many instances, these folks I'm describing, they not only have the talents and skills to help us implement it, but in some instances, they've actually got the economic means. They've already got the business contacts. Their parents are running important businesses here in the community, and they are ready to invest their money in bringing what they saw in other places to the city of Ashland. That's why I have so much hope for the community. because we do have the right people here. We have all the resources we need to be successful and be that place we all want to be. Now we just need someone to help pull it together, to invite them to the table and to support them as they move this community forward. And that, Bree, is why I'm running for mayor.
A few minutes ago, you kind of talked about, the drug, coming into the city, and one of your focuses is the crime rate. With both
Yes.
of those, how do you plan on reducing that crime rate?
And that's probably the most challenging issue of all of the priorities that I see for the city. And the truth is, we have seen an increase in crime, both violent crime, but also theft and other drug-related crimes. I guess the bottom line is this: if you talk to the police chief, if you talk to the sheriff, the truth is, even those crimes like theft and so on are usually related to drug abuse, someone having to try to get the funds to support their addiction. How are we going to get a hold of that? That's a question our community, I think, is struggling with right now. Certainly one of the ways, and the voters stepped up to the plate and said they believe that this is one of the ways, is by adding law enforcement to our police force. Our police force had been down in numbers for several years, and we're really struggling to even keep all the shifts manned throughout the 24/7 schedule that they maintain. Thanks to the voter support of the levy here in November, the income tax increase, we will be able to add more police. And I know that doesn't solve everything, but the reality is, if you look at the statistics, the more visible the police are, the more of a presence the police have in a community, the more it tends to deter crime, or at least push it elsewhere, And so certainly that'll be one aspect of our attempt to reduce some of these crimes. And then if you talk to some of the other that are involved in our criminal justice system, one of the things you hear is that dealing with them swiftly in the justice system, meaning if they're arrested today, get them into the courts. If you've got a strong case and they're convicted, then make sure that they serve their sentence right away, meaning if that's in the county jail or wherever that might be, immediately make sure there's consequences for breaking our laws. If you do that, folks will, let's face it, you're removing them from the street, and they're not going to do it again, at least while they're in the state or the county's custody. So we're fortunate that we have that sounds bad, but we have a jail that was built to accommodate a time such as this, and so that people are, when they do break our laws and are convicted, they do serve right away. They don't have to wait on a long waiting list and so on. So I guess those are just two aspects of how we're currently looking at addressing the crime issue. And maybe the final one that I would mention is, because most of them are drug-related, heroin-related, and so on, it's kind of what our governor says. We've got to start talking about it. It was probably back in the 80s, we heard Nancy Reagan and Michael Jackson say, just say no. Well, that may not be enough right now. That message may not reverberate with the population that is struggling with temptation when it comes to drugs. But you and I, we need to make firm, bold public stands against drug abuse. Let's face it, it's destroying lives. And every one of those lives that's destroyed has a family that suffers. And every family that suffers, it brings suffering to our community. And if we're going to be healthy and vibrant, we've got to go to the core of the issue.
Okay, and then kind of, taking a different direction here, why do you think you're the best fit to be mayor?
Well, I'll tell you what, there's probably several reasons. Number one, I have strong roots here. I know the people in this community. I share many of their same values. I share many of their same viewpoints. I understand all the players because I've been involved with them in both my role at the county government, at the Salvation Army Kroc Center, now at ODOT, and just through all the volunteer organizations I've been a part of. And so I'm set and ready to go. And quite frankly, experience. At this point, I do have experience in both county government, city government, as well as ODOT. I've run organizations that have up to an $80 million annual budget. I've worked for an organization where I oversee 435 employees. And so I've hopefully gained some wisdom and some knowledge that will help me lead our city to a better tomorrow.
And then what do you bring to the table that you think your opponent doesn't?
Well, I'll tell you what, I always like to stay focused on what I can bring to the table. Certainly, I know my opponent. We've known each other for the last several years. I can work with anyone, and I enjoy working with people of all different personalities and all different backgrounds. And certainly, if I do get a chance to serve as mayor, I hope to work with my opponent in her current role to bring new life to the city and certainly the downtown. So I would say more than anything else, we'll be willing to work with anyone if we're elected as mayor.
Okay, and then was there anything else you kind of wanted the public and the community to know about your campaign that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, I guess I would just say this. If anyone has anything they want to talk to me about, any issue they want to share with me, any problem or concern about the city, or any idea on what we can do to make it better, I would love to hear from them. They can contact me by email, contact me by phone. In fact, my wife and I have kept our landline just so we have a phone number in the phone book so people can even open up an old phone book and find us. And then, of course, we do have an online presence. If they visit mattmillerforashland.com, mattmillerforashland.com, you can reach me on my website or on Facebook at Matt Miller for Ashland as well. And you know, Bree, maybe as I close, this is something I should say. In my campaign, my yard signs say Matt Miller for Ashland. They don't say Matt Miller for mayor, they say Matt Miller for Ashland. That was very intentional because it goes back to the opening of our conversation. I am for supporting the efforts of this entire community, and each component, our nonprofits and charities, our schools, our government, our economic development efforts, our business owners and operators, and the citizens who simply call this as a great place to live. When I said Matt Miller for Ashland, it's because that's what this campaign is about. It's about all of us realizing we're on the same team and using the best we have to offer to move the city of Ashland forward. So mattmillerforashland.com would be a great way to check out who this character is and hopefully learn a bit more and even contact me if people want one of those yard signs.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sitting with me today, and good luck with your campaign.
Thank you, Bree. Thank you.
After the break, Megan Furby will sit down with current City Councilwoman and mayoral candidate Sandra Tunnell. Stay tuned.
The Collegian, Ashland University's award-winning newspaper, covering university news events, sports, and campus activities. A bi-monthly traditional newspaper that can also be accessed every day via online at ashlandcollegian.com for up-to-date campus news. Delivering stories that matter to Ashland University's students, faculty, and staff. The Collegian, student-written, student-edited.
Welcome back to the Mayor edition of Main Street. I'm Megan Furby. Here with me now is current City Councilwoman and mayoral candidate Sandra Tunnell. Thank you, Sandra, for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So you've been City Councilwoman for 8 years now. What did you decide to do as stepping up for the position of mayor?
Well, as a city councilman, of course, I'm in the legislative branch. The mayoral position has a lot more authority and autonomy. There's really where a lot of the big decisions are able to be made, and I thought I could use my experience and my knowledge of the city and really be a more dynamic leader, help bringing us into the 21st century, and really get going with the plans that we have for the city and things where we'd like to go and things we'd really like to accomplish.
So being on council, and I'll describe how Fourth Ward, how that works as for being a councilwoman.
So the Fourth Ward is pretty much in the north end of town, and then I take concerns and complaints and questions from people in the Fourth Ward, and then share those with people in the city government, and see what we can do about that and how we can help them. So I have an email full of people having questions and concerns, and then what we do. For example, I had somebody really concerned and called me because we've had some police activity in the Fourth Ward that is really above and beyond what we like to see. So she said, can we start a neighborhood watch group? I said, sure, how hard could that be? So we're meeting next week at the police station with Chief Marcelli, who's agreed to help us. And that came out of her calling and saying, I'm really concerned and what can we do? And I made some calls and they called her and here we are.
So from those skills, how will you have those carried over for if you become mayor?
I am an action person, although I talk a lot. I like to do things, not just talk about them. I'm not really a politician in that sense. So that's kind of how I got started with Mainstreet, is they said, we really need someone to lead this, who's going to do it? And we all looked around and was me. So I'm a fixer. So if you call me and you have an issue, instead of saying, well, that's great, Megan, and I'll get back to you, it's, that's great, Megan, let me call and let me see who I can talk to and let's see how we can fix it, and then call back and say, here's how we can fix it, or here's why we can't fix it, but how can we make it better? How can we have your experience be better? So I do that a lot now, and I would like to do that a lot more as mayor.
So from not being born and raised in Ashland, how do you think that has affected your campaign as you go on throughout this rest of the race?
I think that gives me an advantage, actually, because having not been born here and not living here, when we came to Ashland, I remember looking around and saying, this is an awesome community, and a lot of Ashlanders seem to not appreciate that because they've lived there so long. I mean, it's the familiarity thing that when you've been there for a while, you don't necessarily appreciate all the wonderfulness. And here's my example, is when people talk about being from Ashland, there's always this downward inflection, like, oh, Ashland. Ashland is awesome. It's this great community. It's right in the middle of Ohio. We have all these amenities. We have all these great things we're doing. We have this amazing quality of life. We're safe. We've got great education. We have a great university. We have all these wonderful things that are going on. You should be proud of Ashland. And so when I come here and people say, oh, why do you move here? Well, why wouldn't I? And why wouldn't other people want to? So that's what I like to talk about when I'm out talking to people. This is great. You can call your city councilman and get something taken care of and get something fixed, and that's just me. So why not? And other people too, but why not take that and expand that more? So I think that coming in here and saying all these wonderful things that we have, don't take them for granted. And trust me, there are a lot of places in Ohio and in America where you don't have this. So embrace it.
You are the executive director of Mainstreet. How does that help you with seeing the visions for this future city?
So when we first came to Ashland and we drove through downtown, and I thought, well, this downtown has a lot of bones, great bones. And then when we started the Mainstreet organization, and we needed to have a director, and I stepped up for that. And when we first started, there were so many people who said it won't happen, it won't happen. We've done this before, it'll never happen. And now downtown is hopping. We have events today. We have events going on all year round. People come downtown. They've invested their money. They invest their time. And so in just 5 years, I've led an organization that has taken a vital part of the community and turn it around. And I think I can do the same thing with our whole city. I mean, it takes work, and it takes energy, and it takes commitment, and it takes getting out there. We had this event tonight, and I'll be out there carrying the signs that weigh like 30 pounds apiece and sitting out there and selling tickets. But that's what has to happen to make everything happen, so I'm happy to do it.
Now, in Matt Miller's campaign as well, he's choosing to revitalize the city as well. How does yours differ from his?
Well, I'm leading the downtown revitalization, and he is saying that it's important. So I guess I would say that it's great to talk about how great downtown is, and I hear from a lot of people how wonderful it is, but who's actually doing something to make it happen?
Since you plan on fixing it all, how are some of the plans to fix, I guess, more of downtown within just revitalizing it?
Well, I like fix it all. Fixing it all.
Okay.
So the downtown right now, we've got a downtown grant. It's $300,000. We're using that to fix up some of the buildings downtown. The Gerald's building is being revitalized right now. We have a grant for the theater. There's a lot of monies out there that can help us. So just when you're talking about downtown, there are a lot of resources. We go to Columbus a lot. I was just in Columbus this past week. We have a great statewide organization who helps us coordinate and make things happen. So when you're talking about how to get things actually accomplished and get things done, I have a lot of resources and know people. So when people come up and say, I'm working on this event, I have a friend whose son is fixing up a house, and we just talked about grant opportunities that he could use. And I told her, I said, here are the people, here's who you call, here's where you go. He's giving back to the community. There are ways for us to give back and help you. So there's a lot of different things that we can do for people, and it doesn't just have to be downtown. It can be all over the community.
Now, how does working with Mayor Glenn Stewart benefit your campaign and also knowing the knowledge of the position?
Mayor Stewart was wonderful to work with. He really did a great job of kind of taking me under his wing and explaining things. We used to hang out and talk a lot, and we still do actually, just about, you're seeing this going on, well, this is why it's going on, or here's the behind the scenes, or let's think more globally or more in a long-term range. So he really helped me kind of hone my politics and figure out, why we need to do some of the things that we need to do. He's been a great mentor. I was a part of his re-election campaign, so we got to do it from that end. And he has been a great resource for all sorts of things and still is. So I appreciate his guidance and helped me, maneuver some things that people might not realize. We worked together for 7 years, so there was a lot of institutional knowledge that he had that he could share with me.
So you're the president of the library board, how does that work with helping more people get job seeking or find jobs within that?
We just were in Columbus talking about what the libraries do for people. So what we're doing with our library and libraries across the state really is explaining that they're not just for getting books and DVDs and magazines. There's so much more. That if at the most basic level you can get Wi-Fi access, you can use a computer, you can have your resume. There's resume building that's available. We have this BOSS program where if you are a small business, they can help you kind of navigate some of the challenges that businesses have. But I would say the most important thing is it's a resource, and what we've tried to do at the board level is really take it to the next step and say, what can we do with this building and these resources and these people, and how can we make them be more helpful and applicable to our community? And that's kind of what I do in a lot of my situations. But as board president, we've really worked hard to take that library into the future and helping people. We just had a huge revitalization project there. There's a slide, there's fun things to do to bring people in to use the library, but also while you're here, how can we help you with what you need?
Well, what are your thoughts with the community being involved in the county government?
The community is welcome. We have city council meetings all the time. The county commissioners have meetings all the time. They're always published. They're in the paper. They're on everybody's websites. You know, when you talk about transparency, we are as transparent as we can be. If you have a question, I know I always answer people's questions when they ask me. We are happy to share what's going on because it's your money and it's your community and it's your tax dollars and everything we're doing. It isn't for us, it's for you. So we should be as open as possible. And if people have questions, there's a whole public meeting time for the council meetings, and we like to hear what people have to say because sometimes people come up with ideas that we never thought of. Mm-hmm. So the more the merrier.
You have done many ride-alongs with city departments. How do you choose, or how do you, I guess, help to improve those departments?
So I've ridden along with the police department 3 times now, and it was just so eye-opening because you talk about what the police do and they tell you what they do, and then you watch TV, and it is completely different from what you see. I was super fortunate they let me go along with them on a drug sting last year, and the way people are living who are doing drugs, it is not the way Hollywood does it. And after that meeting, I was just full of questions and what can we do about this and how can we make this better and what do you need? So it's one thing for Chief Marcelli to say, we need these things because. It's another thing for me to say, okay, now that I have been there, I understand. You know, I always tease the fire department. The fire department and the police department take up a lot of our general fund, but they need to. And we had a practice burn, and we got to go along with it for the fire department. The reason that stuff is expensive, their turnout gear and their uniforms, is because it protects you from a fire, and it gets really hot when the firemen are in there, and you want them to get in there and save you. So people can complain all they want about that budget. It is worth every penny. So just being there and seeing what they do every day is super important, I think, to the knowledge that I have for the city and the knowledge I can use when I become mayor.
Now, your husband is a prosecuting attorney. How does his knowledge of the law help or better your campaign with just the police or fire departments?
He sees a lot of the stuff that I don't see because he's talking to police all the time and he's seeing the interviews and he's talking to victims as well. So he has always been very generous in sharing his information and, you know, suggesting things that maybe we wouldn't recognize at the city level or I wouldn't recognize as a city councilman. Like, make sure that you're asking about this because maybe a policeman is in the middle of something and doesn't recognize that that's something that I need to see and that's what I need to know to help promote whatever their needs are.
With your background in banking, what knowledge do you want to use towards the budget and to help budget the city for the budget? So
I've been the budget hawk for the last several years because the budget is super important, obviously. What we're doing with the money, again, it's your money, it's all of our monies. So I am the one who's always asking, you know, where is our budget? How do we make this more efficient? And how are we spending this money? Because it is such a big budget, I think sometimes things get lost. And so the more I can help support our department heads and say, this is something I really need, or this is something that I can really use, I just try to do that as often as I can.
In an interview, you said that you wanted to extend the success of downtown to the full city. What are your plans, or how do you plan on doing that? So we have this amazing community, and nobody knows about it. I talk about promotion and marketing all the time, and it seems to be a bad word with people, but there's this jewel, this gem of a community, and we live in it, and so many people don't know about it. And it's the same thing with the downtown. We took the downtown and we told people, come down and see it. Come down and see our stores. Come see what's going on. Here's an event we can do.
I want to take that same process and use it for the entire community. Come see our city. Come here and visit. Come to an event. Come to bring your child to AU. And then while you're here, look around. Maybe your child wants to stay. Well, how do we make you stay as a student? How do we make your parents, maybe not at the same time, you might not want that, but how do we make people come into the community and then stay in the community? Because that only betters all of us. So how do we bring you in? We've got this wonderful quality of life. We've been focusing on that for the downtown. It's applicable to the whole community. The whole town has this wonderful quality of life, and we want people to take advantage of that.
We touched on you being not born and raised here in Ashland. How have you been able to be with the community, or being able to be more with the city officials or whatnot, being able to be known more by them?
The nice thing about Ashland, one of the wonderful things about Ashland, is a small town, and people, I think, are welcoming. I think that it's a complete misconception that people aren't willing to talk and communicate. So, here's someone who's not from here, and I'm a city councilman running for mayor. You can't do that in a lot of communities. You can't do that in a lot of big cities. So that kind of warmth and that welcoming attitude that Ashlanders have, I've been able to experience it firsthand. I think that not being from here is actually something that's a strength, it's not a weakness. So nobody has ever said to me, oh, just because I didn't go to school with your great-great-grandfather, that's going to work against you. Everybody has always been super, super supportive and welcoming.
Now, why do you think you're the best fit for mayor?
My tagline is working for Ashland, because what I've been doing is actually out there physically making things happen. Politicians talk a lot and they say a lot of things, and they make a lot of promises, and then nothing happens. And I've been trying to be the antithesis of that. How can I go out and help you make things better? How can we work together? We're out there, we're moving things around, we're picking things up, we're making things happen. I think that my, I guess, servant leadership, I am happy to lead from behind and say, how can we all get together and make all this better? I think that's what makes me, uniquely qualified for this.
What do you bring to the table that you think your other candidate does not?
I have been out there on the streets, walking around, trying to get people involved and part of the community since I first got here. We were doing outreach when I was at the bank. We were doing outreach for Mainstreet. We do outreach at the library. How can we get more people involved? It's not just sitting around and taking photo ops. It's about really being out there and talking to people and communicating with them. When we had this parade just last week for the winter sports, I didn't show up at the last minute and get mic'd up and get ready to go. I was out there walking around, seeing where would the best place for this would be, and out and talking to the police and where do we put the cones and all that things. You can't just sit back and talk about things. You have to be a part of it and make something happen.
Now, for our last one, are some other things that you would like the public to know about your campaign that we didn't touch on, or that you think would be important for them to know about?
I think that I'm really approachable, that my plan is to stay in Ashland and continue to do things for the community. I'm not looking at this as some sort of stepping stone to move on to bigger things. Ashland has a lot of great, wonderful things to do, and I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of making this community an even better community than it is now. I'm not looking to say in a couple years, here's a seat here, there's a seat there that I'd rather go for. So I'm happy to commit my time and energy to the city of Ashland, and I hope people know that. I hope people know that they might not recognize my name, because usually I'm the one behind the scenes doing this stuff instead of in front of the camera. So when people are looking around saying, she looks familiar, that's because I was the one picking up the garbage when we had an event. So I think it's really important to show people that I'm willing to get down and get dirty and help fix things and help make things better.
Sandra, thank you so much for being here, and good luck in your race. That's all for this special edition of Main Street. For Bree Gannon, I'm Megan Furby. Thanks for watching.